you pick up a shirt to start recording a video, only for a giant moth to fly out of it. Now, perhaps not the biggest moth in the history of moths, but as someone with a phobia of Lepidoptera, it was big enough. And now I'm just sat here knowing that somewhere within this room there is a rather large moth, and it is probably going to appear at night. I did recently find out that when I was younger, knowing that I didn't like moths, my younger brother used to catch them and place them in my room. I mean, I used to keep these windows closed and the door closed because I was that worried a moth would get in, only to find out that it was all my brother's fault. Anyway, I am currently off work. It's a Friday. I booked a bit of time off, and it's actually 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and so far all of my plans that I'd hoped for not happened. I was going to go for a walk with my mother and Sally. Sally's vomiting. I mean, mother's been called over to her mother. And I've not done any reading, despite wanting to catch up. And I've only done a little bit of writing because the other day I was lying in bed and had a great thought for the next chapter, how it was all going to run and how I was going to go straight out of one chapter into the next. And I was really hoping to get this book finished before I return to work next week. And what happened? I didn't write it down and I forgot everything. I wrote half a page and I was like, I'm going to have to plan this all again. My birthday that wasn't a birthday happened a fortnight ago, and yesterday the book that I acquired with a book voucher I was gifted by a volunteer arrived, and that is A Change of Climate by Hilary Mantel. I'm really getting through these Hilary Mantel books now. This one, won't lie, disappointed because the cover arrived damaged, but it's not affected the interior. I was interested in this because of the first line, which you could read on Waterstone's website, which was, "One day, when Kit was 10 years old, a visitor cut her wrists in the kitchen." It follows this family who live at the Red House in Norfolk and is going to explore the fissures in their family whilst also going back and discussing their lives as missionaries, and are they going to be able to escape the demons of their past, it says on the back. And then one of my most anticipated books of the year arrived today. This was a book that I was going to gift to myself because of how expensive it is, and then I decided, no, we aren't buying any books around the actual anniversary of our birth in case someone jumps on it and says, I'll give you the money for that, rather than, you know, think of me. If you didn't know, I say it all the time, my favourite writer of the moment is Joanne Harris. She also releases books under the name Joanne M. Harris, and the latest one of those, Honeycomb, came out earlier this month or last month. This is a beautiful object. It has some rather grand illustrations inside. It was certainly an investment, and might be one of the most expensive books I have ever purchased. But that's not saying much really, since I'm a cheapskate. I believe the tale that is told within Honeycomb is based on the tales that Joanne Harris has been sharing on Twitter for the last decade, and they have become a form of interconnected fairy tales and folk tales. And here I'm going to read the blurb. Long ago and far away and long ago, the world was honeycomb, we know. The worlds were honeycomb. Rich, dark and opulent. Cocooned in silk and shadows, this is a novel unlike any other. A honeycomb built from 100 cells, where each cell is a story in its own right. Follow the Lacewing King, trickster and ruler of the Silken Folk, on his misadventures through the many worlds, pursued by both the vengeful Spider Queen and the deadly Harlequin. On his travels through the undersea, the river dream, and even the kingdom of death itself, he encounters a multitude of characters. A watchmaker's boy, a huntress with a mechanical tiger, a princess who dreams of a library, but none more magical than the bees, the little builders of honeycomb, spinning their nectar into stories. This is a stunning and original mosaic novel from best-selling author Joanne M. Harris and legendary artist Charles Vess. So I do believe that the foiling here is copper foiling, and then we have the light blue, what do they call it? Naked hardback. But it's brilliant to look at. I have been looking forward to this for a while, and in a fortnight, Joanne Harris's next book, or even next week, A Narrow Door, which is a sequel to Gentleman and Players, Blue-Eyed Boy, and Different Class comes out. There's every chance, as I said about my library haul, that I'm going to throw out my TBR for this book, which is weird considering I actually have a lot of books on the go already. I should say, in terms of Honeycomb, if you listen to the blurb then, doesn't it sound like one of those perfect books to read in the autumn and or the rainy days? I am kind of hoping that we're going to get some rainy days right now, but it seems like one of those that you want to get swept up in, and I do think that the blurb speaks to that autumnal, almost festive time of year. Yeah, there's a lot there. There's the folktale, the mosaic novel. I think if you're a fan of The Starless Sea, I wasn't, you might enjoy this. If you're a fan of any of those stories that are made up of loads of different stories, you're going to enjoy that one. Also, Joanne Harris. You can't go wrong with Joanne Harris. I don't know who's drilling, but either way. Currently reading Cards on the Table by Agatha Christie. Started this morning because I'm in a bit of a rut reading-wise. I'm reading the Karamazov brothers with Emily of Novel Novels, and basically my pages for that are currently read. And I'm also reading the summer... What's it called? No, it's not called. The Country Life by Rachel Cusk. And despite rather appreciating the tone that she's taken, which is almost a pastiche of Victorian literature, I do find myself not wanting to pick it up. It's one of those where I pick it up and I'm like, not sure why I'm enjoying it, but knowing I'm enjoying it. Either way, Cards on the Table was a bit of a palate cleanser for me. Only 30 pages in, but is one that I could probably read and finish today, as it's only 220 pages, and is something I usually do with the Poirot novels. I have decided to throw out my TBR for July and just decided those books that I have now put on a TBR for June and July will just have to carry me through the rest of the year, and as long as I've got them read, I'll be happy, but I really do not mind. I think that I might go and have a cup of tea, and I think that I might take Sally for a walk, only a short one. I'll hopefully see you tomorrow. It's Saturday. It's Saturday, and today I woke with the intention of having a day of reading. So that is almost what I've done. At about 7 o'clock, I started reading The Country Life by Rachel Cusk, which is a strange book, in that I shouldn't like it. I'd say that the style is somewhat reminiscent of the grandiloquent writers of the Regency to the Victorian era. It's somewhat more purple prose, very flowery, very introspective prose, that for me has encapsulated the idea of the summertime, because this is set over a few days in summer. You're getting to read every single thought that goes through this character's head. It's been about 3 days and we are 200 plus pages in, and it doesn't feel like a lot has happened, but it feels very intense. And I'm really enjoying it. But at the same time, I've absolutely no idea why. It's a book that I have avoided at times because I feel like I have to be in a mood for the prose, and every time I'm reading it, I'm like, I'm enjoying this, but why? Maybe it's something I don't need to question, but I do. And I'm hoping to finish that later on today. Last night, I finished reading Cards on the Table by Agatha Christie. This is a Poirot story, and as we know, Poirot is not my favourite detective. I don't particularly care to read about Poirot. One of the good things about this book is Ariadne Oliver and how she mentions certain things to do with writing crime fiction, and I felt as though Agatha Christie was lampooning herself, really. I feel like she was taking a sly dig at the way she writes, because she mentions how people just look for the person they least expect, which is something that Agatha Christie was criticised for, and they decide that that is the killer. Here she says that there's only 4 possible murderers and we're going to go into their lives. It was a fast read. It was Christie. I still question whether at the time of writing these she wasn't just writing them perfectly adaptable for radio plays, because they're very dialogue heavy. There's not a lot of clues. There's not a lot of gadding about all over the place trying to solve the crime. There's not a lot of real detective work. It's just conversation after conversation, and then Poirot's like, well, here's the killer. Could have been better. Needs improvement. And I have finished listening to Thief of Time by Terry Pratchett. I don't think that this book translated well to audiobook. There are a lot of characters and there is a plot there that I struggled to figure out what exactly was happening, and sometimes it would move about too much for me to figure out just where the story was and who the characters were. But it's Terry Pratchett. It made me laugh. I enjoyed experiencing things with the characters and will definitely revisit in future. This one sees a man design a glass clock, not realising that when he does so, that will stop time. Meanwhile, there is Death has to get involved, but he can't get involved, so he sends his granddaughter in to try and solve this mess, and that puts her in with this character who I believe was either Lobsang or Lutze, because I kept getting those two mixed up, and that was where my issue was. I kept confusing those two characters, and it made it difficult for me to then figure out what was going on. But I did like the jokes. I liked the way that Terry Pratchett sends up the fantasy and science fiction genre, and it was a Discworld novel, and I find them really entertaining, whether or not I can properly understand the gist of the tale. Which means that I am now going to be starting reading, well, I'm going to finish reading The Country Life today, and I'm also starting on Light Perpetual by Francis Spufford, which I reserved from the library, and Charlie of Charlie Brook is reading as well, so we said that we might read it together. I was interested in this because it talked about a novel set in the post-war period, but it transpires that I actually completely misread the blurb, and it's a novel that is similar to Life After Life in that a bomb goes off in 1944, and then the subsequent chapters show the lives these people could have lived had they not died. But we will, I don't know. I said to Charlie, when it came to Life After Life, I just was a bit, what was the word? Indifferent to the story, really. And I found it very easy to put down, and eventually DNF'd it about 3 times. But I know that it's my friend Joy's, one of her favourites, that she's reread and reread again and finds something and really enjoys it. But I wonder if this book is going to be quite similar to that, and I'm going to end up not enjoying it. I've already heard from Charlie she has a criticism of the way that the tale is told. And I'm already jealous of Charlie because she read Second Place by Rachel Cusk, and as we know at the moment, I'm kind of fanboying over her as well. That was difficult for me to say because I usually just say fangirling and whatever. Gender is a construct, tear it apart, as the great Sacha Velour once said. Anyway. I don't know what this vlog is. I went down the canal earlier with my mother and Sally, and I had to walk slowly because it's all about exercising my mother as well, who's currently off sick because of issues. And so we're going slowly, and then there were all these dogs there, and I just picked the wrong time, and there was a very young lurcher there, and the owner didn't really have control over it, and that was not fair on Sally, who's been ill for the last few days. But hey, I'm getting to spend the day reading, and that's always a fun occupation. I'm not really sure if this video can even constitute as a vlog anymore. It very much feels like a load of composite pieces thrust together in the hopes of creating some sort of entertainment. No, I'm not looking to entertain you. And I suppose the original vlogging style was like a diary format. So I don't know what I'm trying to do with this video. I believe I last spoke to you on Saturday because yesterday I just chose not to do anything but read. I actually had a few cold symptoms. They weren't cold symptoms really. After that person reversed into my car last week, her insurance company sent me a bunch of flowers to apologise, and I'm just allergic to them. So a day of sneezing saw me reading Light Perpetual by Francis Spufford. I was buddy reading this with Charlie of Charlie Brook, and I have actually recorded a review of this book because I despise it with every fibre of my being. The entire crux of this book is that this rocket that went off in 1944 never went off, so the people that died didn't die, and this is the lives that they could have lived. Only that's just what fiction is. Fiction is about creating stories and things that didn't happen. And so when you remove that idea of a rocket at the start, because it's completely unnecessary to the tale that's then told, it's just this trip through the last 70 years showing us every single big moment that we've come to associate with those times. And it doesn't even do it well. The writing is good. The writing exists. It's not bad writing, but it's bad characterisation, it's bad story, and when the entire hook of your novel is based around this rocket that never went off, you'd imagine that that would have some sort of haunting quality throughout the narrative to keep it moving forward, but it doesn't. It's just, oh, here are all the popular things that happened during the last 70 years in one very short volume. I'm just going to pick a few here and give you basically a condensed version of EastEnders, and I wasn't here for it, so I had to rant about it for 14 minutes. If you didn't know already, I did finish Cards on the Table by Agatha Christie. Didn't really properly understand what was going on with this one. It was very much like, I suppose if you understand bridge as a card game, you'll get this novel. Also, I've talked about this in a wrap-up now, which is what I did today. All I've done today. Well, actually, that's a lie. I awoke rather early, and because of that, chose to finish reading my friend Margaret's book, which is Remember When You Loved Me, which is a tale of a woman who discovers that she has Alzheimer's, and from there we end up going into the lives of her friends and her husband as they begin to watch this person they know and love deteriorate. It's a novella at just 180 pages on the Kindle. It was poignant and sentimental and very much what I've come to expect from Margaret, and support your friends. Which means that today I am going to read to the portion of today that I've got to read of the Karamazov brothers by Dostoevsky, translated by Ignat Avsey. I'm buddy reading this of Emily of Novel Novels throughout the months of July and August, so we'll be finishing this one by the 31st. I have continued to read short stories from Learning to Talk by Hilary Mantel, and I and I'm planning on finishing this collection today. And I will be starting this week off by reading The Vanishing Half by Brit Bennett. This has been pushed back from my June and July TBRs, but now it has actually made it to the finals of the BookTube prize. I was seeing people's videos come out of their reviews and rankings for the latest round of the BookTube prize, and I can't help but admit to some jealousy, some envy, but it's the way things work, and I will see how I feel about The Vanishing Half. I am entering into this novel with low expectations because I didn't care for Brit Bennett's first book, The Mothers, when that came out a few years ago. I could see this making it to the final of the BookTube prize when we first started, and so I'll see how I feel about this one, but I'm hoping to have it finished before I go back to work on Friday. Then I found my copy of Gentlemen and Players by Joanne Harris. Her next book, A Narrow Door, comes out this week, and that is the sequel to this. Now, none of the books in this series are straight sequels. They're all set in the same area, but follow different characters. So you have this blue-eyed boy, different class, and now A Narrow Door. It is over a decade since I first read Gentlemen and Players, and I can't really recall it that well. So I've been questioning doing a reread of these books. But do I read A Narrow Door first, and then go back, is my thinking. I don't know. What I do know is that I need to give some structure to this video, and that means disappearing. I should also say, reading The Two Towers by Tolkien this month, so that's it. I'm recording my wrap-up today. I'm going to be taking the dog out for a walk. I don't know where. Probably just down the canal, because I don't really feel like much else. I should be writing, but I'm really enjoying this almost lackadaisical attitude where I just spend my days sat in a corner reading again. This is the end of this video. If you've read any of the books that I've mentioned and would like to discuss them, then please feel free to do so. I hope that you have enjoyed this video, and until next time, that is all.